Okay, so the next lesson in factoring is called Factor by Grouping. So we're going to start off with a real easy problem. What you're going to be doing is the same thing that we did before. We're going to be looking for the greatest common factor. Now, you're not going to really want to look at this as two big terms, but you need to train yourself that this is one term, and then this is another big term. And I need you to look to see what is common to both of those. All right, if you look, there is an x plus 2 in both of these. So we're going to call that our common factor. So here is my x plus 2. That's going to be my common factor. And so I'm just going to highlight this for you so that you can see that a little bit easier. So x plus 2 is our common factor. Okay? All right. So the way we did the other problems when we were taking out the common factor is it had to be in both. So we wrote down, we brought it out. This was what was common. So x plus 2 is the common factor. And then I'm just going to take my pen and I'm going to mark those out. I'm not going to use those again. And then you had to write a parentheses. And since it's two terms, they were two big terms. The boxes represent the two big terms. This is going to be an x and then a minus 4. So we have two terms and we have an x and a negative 4 left over. So your answer to this factoring problem is actually a binomial times a binomial. X plus 2 times x minus 4. So this is going to be, I did number 1 first because this is like the last step of the rest of the problems. And I wanted you to see how that worked. So now let's look at number 2. Now number 2, you're going to go through this one and you're going to do it just like we did the other greatest common factor problems. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the greatest common factor. Now, number 1, I should have put my greatest common factor in a cloud. It was x plus 2, so I forgot about that. So on number 2, we're going to do the same thing. All right? So for the first step, you go all the way across and you look to see if there's a number that'll go into 12, 21, 8, and 14. Okay? So I'm thinking I'm going to take the small number just like I used to. So I have an 8. Numbers that go into 8 are 2 and 4 and 1 and 8. Okay? So do these numbers also go into 12, 21, and 14? Well, 2 goes into 12, but it doesn't go into 21, so I can't use that. 4 goes into 12, but not 21 and not 14, so I can't use that. 8 doesn't go into 12. 8 doesn't go into 21 or 14. So no, I do not have a common factor for all 4 of those numbers. The only common factor would be 1, and we're not going to bring out a 1 unless that's the only thing we can do. All right, then you want to check to see if there's a letter in all. So is there an A in every term? No. Is there a C in every term? No. Is there a D in every term? No. What about a B? No. They're in some, but not in all. So we don't have a greatest common factor at this point. So GCF for the first step, we didn't have one. Okay, so if you don't have a greatest common factor, then you want to group up 2 at a time. So we're going to take the first 2, and we're going to just put these 2 in parentheses. So we're actually making 2 little problems out of 1 big problem. Now, if you notice, all of these terms are positive terms. So this will be easy as far as signs go because you're not going to have to worry about any negatives. Everything's going to be plus. All right, so we're going to look at this as 2 little problems, just like we finished on the other 5-minute checks that we did. So what would I look at here? I would look for the greatest common factor of 12 and 21. Okay, so you got to know what's the number that's going to go into 12 and go into 21. So what are some numbers that go into 12? 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, and 4. All right. Do we have a number here that also goes into 21? Okay, 1 would, but we're not going to use 1. 2 would not. 3 would. 12 would not. 6 would not. And 4 would not. So it looks like the greatest common factor for this part is going to be a 3. So in this little parentheses, the GCF is a 3. Well, now we have to look at the letters. Is there an A in both? Yes, there's an A in both. Is there a C? No. How about a D? No. So my greatest common factor here is 3A. So now we're going to write 3A. We're going to write our parentheses. This is 2 terms. And then we're going to divide it. 12 divided by 3 is 4. The A's cross out. Bring down my C. 21 divided by 3 is 7. The A's cross out. And then bring down my D. Okay, so now I have this other parentheses. All right, so I'm going to look at 8 and 14. Well, here I did factors of 8 a few minutes ago. So which one of these factors would also go into 14? Well, 1 does, 2 does, 4 does not, 8 does not. So the answer for this would be 2. So my GCF for this little parentheses is a 2. All right, what about the letters? Well, there's a B in both, but there's not a C or a D. So my GCF for this part is 2B. So we write 2B. Write the parentheses, plus sign. 8 divided by 2 is 4. The B's cancel out. You have a C. 14 divided by 2 is 7. The B's cross out, and you're left with a D. Well, now this kind of looks like number 1 did. So we had 2 big terms, and we looked for a common factor. Well, here's 2 big terms, and now we're looking for a common factor. Well, the common factor this time is what? 4C plus 7D. 4C plus 7D. That's going to be my common factor on this one. So we're going to take that and we're going to bring it out. So out here, my GCF is 4C plus 7D. So that's going to come out. All right, and what do we do next? Cancel those out, write my parentheses. This was 2 terms. I write 2 terms, and my 2 terms are 3A and positive 2B. And this should be the answer. Now, you always want to make sure in these parentheses that you don't have a common factor. So if you just check real quick here, 4 and 7 doesn't have a common factor, and C and D is okay too. 3 and 2 is okay, A and B is okay. Every now and then you might end up where you didn't take the common factor out at the beginning and you have to take it at the end. So you have to be careful on that. Okay, number 3. Number 3 looks real easy, but it's just a little trick that I'm going to show you that we're going to use in some problems coming up. All right, so you've always been told that you can't turn a subtraction problem around. Well, I'm going to tell you today that you can turn it around, and 3 minus x can become x minus 3 if you bring out a negative 1. So you have bring out means factor out a negative 1. Okay, and basically all that does is it changes signs. That's all that does. Okay, so we'll look at that here in just a second. All right, so let's look at number 4. So that one was really easy. And again, that was just something that I needed to show you to get you ready to do just like the next problem. All right, so for number 4, we're going to look for, we have 4 terms. We're going to look for common factors. Well, I have a 15, a 3, a 4, and a 20. Does 3 go into everything? No. So since it doesn't go into everything, and that's all I can do. Okay, so I don't have a greatest common factor. Is there an x in everything? No. What about a y? No. So we don't have a greatest common factor, but we did look for one. Okay, so now what was the next part? If you didn't have a greatest common factor and we have 4 terms, we're going to group the first 2 together. Okay, we have a plus sign here in the middle. Now in the last problem, On number 2, we had all positives. Well, this one you see, you've got some minus signs, but as long as that third term is a plus, you're still in good shape. It's still not going to be that hard. All right, so we've got them grouped up, and now we're going to factor out the common factors in the first parentheses and in the second parentheses. So let's do the first one. So what number do you know that goes into 15 and 3? Well, hopefully you said 3. Okay, so our common factor here should be 3. All right, is there an x in both? Yes, so I have to write an x. Well, the exponent would just be a 1. And is there a y in both? No, so we're going to factor out a 3x. Okay, so now we're going to divide to get the inside. Well, this is 2 terms. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. And guess what? The x's cancel out. 3 divided by 3, x divided by x, they're exactly the same. So they cancel out. So what's left over? Just a y. All right, so now we're going to go to the next one. So what's my greatest common factor going to be here? Well, does 4 go into 20? Yes, it goes into it 5 times. So the greatest common factor here is going to be a 4. Is there a y in both? No. So I'm going to write my plus sign. I'm going to write my greatest common factor, which is 4. And now I'm going to divide. So the 4's will cancel. You're left with a y. How many times does 4 go into 20? 5. So I put a 5. All right, now here's where that special thing that we did in number 3 comes in. We can either change this one to y minus 5 or this one to 5 minus y. But usually what we do is whatever the first part is, so this first part is 5 minus y, we want to take this, and it looks exactly like y minus 5, except for it's in the wrong order. So we're going to take and make the second one just like the first one. So all you have to do is cancel out the y minus 5 and make it 5 minus y. And what did I tell you had to do on the outside? It said bring out a -1. Well, what's on the outside already? It's a positive 4. So what's that -1 going to do? What did I tell you it would do? It'll change the sign. So that positive 4 is now going to be a -4. All right, so now I'm going to write the first part. And then I'm going to look for my common factor. Well, hopefully by now you see that we did that for a reason. We wanted these to be the same because that's going to be my next common factor, 5 minus y. So we're going to bring out 5 minus y. That's my common factor. I'm going to cross those out. And then what's the leftovers? 3x minus 4 in the next parentheses. And your answer would be 5 minus y times 3x minus 4 for this one. Now, you're probably wondering how you could check this. And we didn't check number 2, but I showed you how to check polynomials before. So all you would do to check this is either do your distributive property or use your box method and do your box. So whichever way you want to do it. And you can just do that on scrap paper. You don't have to show me your check. So I think we have checked those in the past, and you can do your check on those if you want to. Okay, so we're going to do one more 5-minute check, and then this lesson will be complete, and then you'll have some more to do on it also. All right, so we're going to do these because I think we had this minus sign here on the third term, so that's what's going to make these different. All right, so let's look at number 1. This is still called factor by grouping. All right, so what do we do first? We look for the greatest common factor. Okay, so my small number this time is a 6. So the numbers that go into 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. So I want to see if either one of those numbers will go into 6, 15, 8, and 20. So 6 does not go into 15, 6 does not go into 8, 6 does not go into 20, so we can mark it off. We're not going to use 1 unless we have to. All right, does 3 go into 6? Yes. Does 3 go into 15? Yes. Does 3 go into 8? No. Does 3 go into 20? No. So I can't use 3 because it doesn't go into all of them. All right, now let's see if 2 goes into everything. Well, 2 goes into 6, 2 goes into 8, 2 goes into 20, but it doesn't go into 15. So I do not have a number that goes into everything. All right, check for the X's. No. Check for the Y's. No. So we already know that we have to group up. So we're going to group up our first 2. And this time, instead of this being a plus sign, which has made it really easy, we have a minus sign. Well, all I usually do is just bring that minus sign here, write that 8y on the inside, and the only thing that minus is going to do when you have it outside of a parentheses is it's going to change the signs of both of these. So if you notice, instead of it being a negative 8y in the parentheses, now it's a positive. So I have to do the same thing with the 20. So instead of it being a positive 20 in the parentheses, it's got to be a negative. Because when you remultiply this out, you have to still get the same sign that you have. So this would be negative 1 times 8 is negative 8, and negative 1 times negative 20 would be positive 20. As long as you get that right, you should be okay the rest of the problem. Okay, so what is common to 6 and 15? Okay, let's see. 6 doesn't go into 15, but 3 does. Okay, so 3 goes into 6 and 3 goes into 15. Is there an X in both? Yes. There's not a Y in both. So my greatest common factor for this first part is 3X. Okay, you should be getting pretty good with this. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. X's will cancel out. I'm left with a 2 and a Y. All right, 3 goes into 15, 5. The X's cancel out, so this part's finished. Okay, now I'm going to write my minus sign down, and now we're going to look at 8 and 20. Well, what goes into 8? So we have 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Does 8 go into 20? No, so you can't use 8. Not going to use 1. Does 2 go into 20? Yes, but 4 also goes into 20. So since 4 is the largest, you have to use 4. So we're going to put a 4 here. All right, is there a Y in both? No, so we're not going to use a Y. So my common factor here was a 4. Okay, so parentheses, 2 terms, 4 goes into 8 2 times with a Y, 4 goes into 20 5 times. And now, if you notice, here's your common factor for the 2 big terms. So we have 2y minus 5, parentheses, and then mark those out, and you get 3x minus 4 for the leftover. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop right there because I think you have enough examples. You have one with all pluses. You have one where we had to switch everything around. And this one you had a minus. And I think if you watch this over and over and over again, you'll be able to do the rest. So good luck and see you in class.